So this again is what our house is going to look like. Little hook, and the door should just flip right open right there. My finish is covering every part of the house except for this interior part where the holes are. So later when you're applying a finish, make sure you don't apply any finish to your actual nesting cavities. All right, so I have my pieces right here. I'm going to start taking things apart. So I'm gonna pull my tape off of here. Everything is arranged the way that it should fit together. So you can kind of keep that in mind as you're taking this all apart if you haven't taken it apart yet. And I'm going to literally build this. So if at any point, you know, if you get further ahead of me, that's totally fine. If you're falling behind and you want a little bit more direction, please let me know. I'm just going to go through and build this with you, and I imagine we'll all kind of go at our own pace, but I am here to help and assist you in any way that I can, virtually. So I have my roof piece. I'm going to kind of set this to the side so it's out of the way. The very first thing that we're going to be doing, and I'm going to set, this is, you know, we can kind of go through the pieces here. I like to keep mine oriented so that the holes are to my left. It's just what makes sense to me while I'm building. So I'm going to pull all of these pieces off that I'm not currently using. Take my door out of here. And the very first step, when we look at our instructions, there's a quick assembly instructions here, or assembly summary. We're going to start with sanding the grooves and edges of our house. So you should have a little piece of sandpaper, and if you have not started doing so already, you're going to need to sand the little grooves in your house. I'm just going to do that. Okay, I'm just kind of sanding that a little bit, and honestly the rest of it looks pretty good to me. As I go along, I might, if I find a sharp edge, I'll give it a quick sand. So once you have your grooves all sanded up, we're going to start assembling some of our pieces. So you'll need to have your Plexi Glass sheet and your right side stop. And when you look at your right side stop, there's a groove on one side. And so the groove is actually a little bit wider than it is deep. And so you want that to slide into your plexiglass sheet with that widest cut is where the plexiglass is going to slide into. So it should be just slightly deeper than your plexiglass sheet is wide, that notch, and that's how you're going to set that on there. And again, I had everything kind of oriented, laid out on your kit in the right orientation before you started. So hopefully you have a little bit of an idea on how that's going to work. So I just kind of eyeball this. Maybe you've had a chance to read through your instructions before starting, but I just kind of center my plexiglass sheet. You know, I kind of have it flush with this edge over here with all of my entrances to my nests, and I'm going to just center my right side stop over top of the plexiglass, making sure that it is flush to the right side of my board here, of this back piece. And then I'm going to start pre-drilling. So again, there's a really good picture in your guide of of how that plexiglass sheet should fit into your stop. So I'm just going to start drilling. So I'm going to get my 1/8 inch bit. So that's, if you're borrowing them from me, that one's the larger of the two bits that I gave you. I'm going to put it into my drill here. And I actually, before I drill, I like to mark my spot where I'm putting my holes. And so I'll mark a spot directly in the center here, and I like to put it so that it's between two of the grooves here. So I'll mark a spot right here, and again, making sure that it is not going to, you don't want to drill through your plexiglass here. You want it to drill through, completely through the wood, not through the notch. So I'm setting it a little bit closer to the edge of the piece of wood than toward the center. So it's off center to the right. I'm going to mark another spot at the top, kind of a similar thing, a little bit off center. And I'll put mine above the very first notch. And I'll put my third drill spot, again, a little off center to the right and below my bottom-most groove. And so I gave each of you a little nail. I'm going to use this little nail to actually put a tiny little starter hole right in the middle of my X. So using my hammer, I'm going to tap it in just a little bit. You can kind of just press it in as well, but it works a little bit better if you have a hammer. And this just makes it easier when you go to drill. It keeps your drill bit from shifting out of place when you start to drill. So I'm going to do that. All right. Again, I'm just double checking to make sure that everything is centered. My plexiglass is centered over my grooves. And I'm going to make sure that my right side stop is also centered over my plastic. You can totally use a tape measure or a ruler at this point to get it kind of equal. I just have been eyeballing it, and that seems to work pretty well. There's a little bit of wiggle room on this. So I'm going to take it and drill through. I'm going to drill through the side stop, all the way through the side stop, and a little bit into my back piece. If you're drilling on a table, kind of like I am, you know, try not to drill into your table. I'm going to assume that's probably not something you want to do. So just drill through. You want to get, again, all the way through your side stop and then partially into your back piece is what you're going for. Now, since I'm working by myself and I don't have someone else to hold it in place for me, I'm going to just drill out my first one, and then I'm going to switch to my T10 star bit, so that little star bit that you have, and I'm going to actually put in my first screw, because that will hold this side stop in place so that it doesn't shift while I continue to make my other holes. So I'm going to put in this first screw. And if you have clamps, you know, this is kind of a nice time to have clamps to clamp things in place. But I'm just going to drill it in. And when you drill it in, you want the top of your screw to go just flush with the wood. So I'm going to drill it in just a little bit, so it's just flush with that. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. This one is flush, and on here, I'm going to switch back to my drill bit. And I'm going to drill out my bottom hole here. My bit's a little bit loose. So I drilled out that bottom hole. Again, I'm going to switch to my T10 bit so that I can put, and this is really, if you're working with a buddy, you might be able to have them hold this piece while you drill all three. I'm working by myself and I don't have a good clamp here at the ready. I'm going to drill out this next one. Again, drill it until it's about flush with your wood piece. I actually drilled mine in a little deeper than I wanted to on that one. All right, now I'm going to drill out my middle one. So my right side stop is attached. 3 screws on here. It's flush with the side of my back piece. My plexiglass still slides in and out, so I didn't drill down through my plexiglass, which is key. And it still fits flush with the edge of my back piece here as well by the entrances. So we'll see how everyone's feeling about that. I'm going to start orienting the left side stop. So that's going to be our next part that we're working on. So this left side stop actually sits on top of the plexiglass sheet. So you should have a piece that is the same length as your right side stop, but it's going to have kind of a slope on the one side. And that slope is going to go to the outside of your bee house. And it's going to be centered with your right side stop, or directly opposite of your right side stop. And just like your right side stop, your left side stop is going to be flush with the entrances to your bee house. Now, to make sure that this is in the right spot, again, a ruler is it's a good idea to kind of measure to see where the top of this should be. I also might just take my bottom and top stops here and just slide them on and just see kind of how this is oriented. Okay, so I have this lined up similar to how I did the right side stop. I am going to make my marks opposite of where I placed my other screws in here. So, and this time you're going to drill directly through the plexiglass. So with this one, you're going to be drilling through the plexiglass to lock it into place. So when we do these, when we're pre-drilling this, we want to make sure our plexiglass is flush and exactly where we want it to be. So I'm marking my 3 spots for my screws. Here, here, and here. And again, checking my plexiglass, because once you start pre-drilling it, it's kind of locked into place. So again, I'm on step 3, and I'm attaching my left side stop. I know a couple of you are still working on your right side stop. I'll move pretty slowly through this. I know some of us are probably moving at different speeds. So again, I'm just making sure that my plexiglass is lined up with my entrances over here on the left. And also my left side stop is lined up with the edge, with my bevel slanting to the outside and this larger flat surface to the top. I've already pre-marked my drill holes on here, and I'm going to put my 1/8 inch drill bit back in so I can pre-drill my hole. Now it's going to feel a little bit different drilling through the plexiglass this time, and you'll know when you hit the plexiglass. You'll see probably some little pieces of plastic kind of come up with your bit. I'm going to move this back down so you can see it. I'm going to hold, again, if you have a buddy, it's great to have someone holding this for you while you're drilling this. I don't, so I'm going to drill one hole first. I'm going to pre-drill this top one, and then I'll actually switch to my T10 bit and put my first screw for this left side stop in, and that'll help anchor it in place so that it's not shifting around while I drill the other holes. So I'm going to do this here. Again, making sure that I'm not drilling through any of my grooves here, so I'm above it. And mine shifted a little bit. Here we go. Hold it really firmly. This is the tricky part. There we go. I could feel it when it went into the plexiglass. It got a little squirrely. Make sure you hold it firmly in place. I'm going to put my screw in. And now my plexiglass is stuck in place. I have this first screw in. I'm going to pre-drill my bottom screw here. I'll switch to my T10 again. Add my second screw to the bottom of my left side stop. And that's there. All right, so now my plexiglass is fully anchored in. I have two of my screws in. I'm going to add a third screw in the center right here. All right, I'm going to put a third screw right here in the middle. Right down through my plexiglass. Again, my plexiglass is completely stuck now. It's not moving. We'll continue assembling at this point, but you know, when it comes time to clean and actually when we go to add sealant at the very end, you'll remove these three screws here to remove this left side stop, and your plexiglass will just slide right out of the notches. So it should be really easy to maintain. All right, so I'm gonna move on to step 4. So the slope on your left side stop will probably make more sense once you start putting your top and bottom stops on, because they're going to have a little bit of a slope to the one side as well. So you want to make sure you have the slope. I'll point this back down. Make sure you have that slope going off to match with the slope on your left side stop. So that should line up with your top and bottom, or your left and right stops. And these should line up well, just like that. So, let's see. Okay, so those are gonna line up just like that. So step 4 is attaching that top and bottom stop then. And so these are, again, you have your notches in here that your plexiglass it's sliding over top of your plexiglass to hold it in place a little bit better. And that, that sloped edge is lining up with the slope on your left side stop toward the entrances to the nest holes. So I'm going to mark this, and I only put 2 screws on the bottom and top stops. I'm going to actually orient my screws slightly different than I did in the picture. I'm going to put them a little bit closer to the edge. If you put them, if you put them in more toward the center, that's fine too, more like the pictures that I have. But I'm only going to use 2 screws for the top, for the bottom and the top stops here. So I'm going to mark those out. Just like with the right side stop, there's that notch in the plexiglass. So you want to make sure that you're not screwing into or drilling into your plexiglass here. So it's going to be, you're going to have to offset your screw toward the bottom a little bit so that it's not going through your notch. So I'll put one, I'll just pre-mark right there, and I'll pre-mark over here. To just start a little hole. So I've marked on the top and the bottom stops. I'm going to take my little nail and just tap into the center of those X's. The nail becomes extremely helpful when we're attaching the hinges. The hinges are definitely important to get oriented in the correct spot. All right, so I'm going to use, again, I'm using my 1/8 inch bit. I'm going to make sure that this is lined up well. And that's going to be flush. I'm going to drill out one of these first. And just like I did with the right stop and the left stop, I'm going to drill out one of my holes and then attach my screw. And then I'll drill out the other hole and attach my screw. If you have a buddy, again, holding it in place for you, that might not be as necessary. But I do not have a buddy with me right now. So I'm going to just go ahead and drill this out. Now I'm going to attach my top stop on here. I have my bottom stop attached and drilled into place. I have these marked and tapped. Pre-drill. All right, so my top and bottom stops are both attached. I'm gonna continue on to the build, and I actually have to pause for just a second because the next step that we're going to do is actually attaching the hinges. And I, silly me, forgot to purchase additional hinges, so I'm gonna scavenge the hinges off of my already made house. So I'm just gonna use my my multi-tool here really quick to remove my hinges, just so we can do that process together. So applying the hinges, in the instructions, I recommended using a couple of pieces of paper. And so I'm just going to use some of the paper from my instructions that I'm done with already and fold them up and use them, and I'll show you how I do that to make sure that my door sits really nicely inside my house. And the reason we want to do this, so as I'm dismantling this, you want to have some space between all edges of your door where your door is sitting. And that is just going to help if there's any warping or, you know, any just fluctuations in the moisture content in your wood that can cause the wood to swell or shrink throughout the seasons. And having that little extra space there will help prevent your door from getting permanently stuck. So that'd be a pretty bum deal to get your doors actually stuck in your hotel here. Then you wouldn't be able to see all of your bees and see what they were doing. All right, so I'll set this over. I'll reattach some hinges to that one eventually. Right now we're gonna move on to attaching the door. So I'm gonna get my door piece. I'm just gonna see how it's fitting in here. Yeah, that looks great. So I'm going to use 2 pieces of paper. Again, like I said, I'm gonna grab just the first couple of pieces of paper from my instruction booklet. I'm just gonna fold them twice. And you could use cardboard or some other, something else too, to just create a little bit of a spacer between. But this works well enough to help hold things in place. Once I have my door in there, I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna try to position it equally from the top and bottom of my house as well. And just kind of make sure that I have about equal space between there. I think that looks pretty good as I moved it. There. And you might, depending on how much space you have, you could even add maybe a second piece of paper. And I might actually do that on this particular one, the way that it's fitting. And use just like another piece of paper sitting here. I'm gonna fold that in here. This just helps it feel more secure while I'm drilling things out too. Okay, so I feel good about how this is centered in here. I'm going to line up my hinges. I'm gonna put one hinge on the top. And again, this is going to be opposite of where your hole entrances are. So this is attaching to your door and your right side stop. So I'm just gonna line up my hinges. And the way I kind of did it, again, if you have a ruler, I haven't really used a ruler this whole time, but I did have it on your recommended list. About 2 inches. Yeah, for me it equates to, from each edge of my paper, 2 inches from each side. So I'm just gonna do that. I'll line up my hinges right up against my paper. And this is just to make sure that they're kind of equally spaced on there. I'm gonna mark it with, I'll actually mark it with my nail again. I'll grab my nail. And again, making sure that my hinge is, the center of my hinge is lined up on the space that is currently between my door and my right side stop, and that my holes are all on, my holes on the hinge where the screws are going to go are all over top of the wood. I'm going to find the center of the hole and tap it. And I'll do that with this one as well. So I like to attach the hinge to the right side stop first, and then I'll attach it to the door. So I'm going to pre-drill these 2 holes. And I'm going to use that smaller bit now. So for the hinges, we're going to use the tinier bit. I recommended the 1/16 inch bit, because your screws for your hinges are going to be a little bit tinier. So I have these two spots here. I'm going to go ahead and mark these out. Now the 1/16 inch bit, if you haven't worked with it before, it is very skinny, it's very small, so it's pretty easy to break. So you want to be pretty delicate with it when you're holding it and getting it into position. Trying to not bend it while you're going. So I'm going to drill this out. Again, I'm actually going to pre-drill the two on the bottom first too, before I go ahead and screw in my hinge. I'm going to use my multi-tool that has my small screwdriver on it to attach my hinges. And so, yeah, the tinier, little tiny screws, there should be 8 of those. Those are what we're going to use to attach our hinge. Just going to drill those in. So I hope everyone is still having a good time and not feeling overly frustrated with everything. All right, so I have my hinges attached to my right side stop. I'm gonna, again, just use my nail. I'm making sure that this is all flush and looking good still. I'll put my papers back in there. And my hinge. I'm gonna make sure I like the way my hinges are looking. I'm going to go ahead and tap my nail in all 4 of these. I'm going to use my 1/16 inch bit to drill out those holes. At this point, I'm making sure that I'm not drilling all the way through my door, because that would go right into my plexiglass. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would mar up my plexiglass a little bit. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put my screws in. All right, so now I have my hinge on there. I'm just gonna check my door and make sure that it actually works. Hey, it opens and shuts really nicely. So that'll be great. There's a good space on each side, the top and bottom. Now I'm gonna add my latch. So that's the point that I think many of you are at right now. That's gonna be step 6 that I'm moving to. So that's page 6. Step 6. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch my drill to the star bit again. And I'm going to take out this center screw. And the center screw, that's the one that is at my entrances. It's on that beveled edge. So I'm taking out that center screw. And that's going to actually hold the hook in place. So I'm taking that out, and I'm going to place my little hook inside. So there we go, placing my hook in my screw. Put that into place. And when you do that, you want to make sure you don't tighten it too much, otherwise your little hook won't be able to swing. Now that that's in place, I can grab my, it's called a hook and staple latch is what this is. So I'm going to put this staple, this other part of the latch, the part the latch hooks into. I'm going to kind of line that up to make sure that I like where it is on here. And I'll mark it with my pencil in the center. And I'll mark the other one in the center as well. I'm going to use my nail and just tap that real quick in the center of my two X's. And then I'm going to use my tiny bit, again, my 1/16 inch bit, to drill those two little holes out. Now I will mention, for those of you who have full drill bit sets, you could potentially use a larger bit for these screws. They're a little bit larger than the ones for the hinges. The 1/16 works fine, but you can use a slightly larger bit too. All right, those are drilled out. Now I'm just going to put my screws in here. Again, I'm going to use my my multi-tool screwdriver, just because that's the one I like to use. All right, so if everything has gone well at this point, your hinge should open and shut nicely on your door. Now, we still have to add our roof. We're getting pretty close though at this point if you're here or a little bit ahead. This is kind of what I was talking about, where it can be prone to cupping. The inside of this door right now, so the back side of this door that is against the plexi glass, there is not a whole lot of, there's not a whole lot of airflow through there, so it won't dry out very quickly. But this outer edge here is exposed to the environment, and this could dry out and potentially cup upward. So if you remember, what we were doing with our paper earlier, you could kind of cup upward like this, and that can make your latch fit a little less nicely than it does right now, hopefully. And so if that happens, applying a finish to the outside of your door, and then opening your house and actually letting this side dry out a little bit, that'll help that cupping go back into place. And you'll just have to keep an eye on it. It can resolve itself within just a few hours. So you really want to watch it. Once everything's fitting together well again, you can go ahead and apply your finish to this side of the door to kind of lock in the moisture that is currently in there. So hopefully your door is fitting good. You got your latch on there. It's time to add the roof on here. So this is the last little bit. I have my roof piece right here. And the roof is going to be centered on your house. So if you have a ruler and you want to check it out to see what the exact distance is going to be, I just have my ruler here. I kind of eyeball it, but a little under 2 centimeters. Let's see what this side looks like. I got a little bit more space. Yeah, so actually both about, what was it, 18 millimeters on each side. That's where I'm at. I'm going to mark my roof just on the top here. And I'm going to put 3 screws in. So I'm going to mark a little spot here, mostly in the center. Oh, I almost forgot. I like to actually want to drill out my hanging hole on here before I attach my roof. So I'm going to finish marking this quick and then I'll do that. So before I attach my roof, I'm going to drill 2 holes, 1 hole at the bottom and 1 hole at the top. And those are going to be what I use to attach my house to whatever structure I end up attaching it to. They attach really nicely to like wooden fences. You could use a wooden post, side of a building, wherever you think is going to be the best spot that has a lot of access to forage. So a lot of native plants preferably, but at least a lot of flowering plants in your garden. And then also, again, that south or southeast orientation is the best. If you only have a north-facing spot that will really work for you, that will be fine as well. I actually, one of my boxes I hung up last year, I hung north-facing, and I had bees in that, so that was fine. So again, I'm just gonna mark this. I'm gonna check. Mark this. It's just easier to drill it out right now before you have your roof on there. Whoop! That's my bit. There we go. I'm drilling this all the way through and just putting it off the edge of my desk here so I don't drill into my desk. There we go. All right, now I'm going to attach my roof. I have those 2 holes made. I'm actually going to clamp my roof into place. I mentioned in the instructions, I think, that having a clamp is a really good idea if you don't have a buddy. I don't have a buddy right now, so I'm going to use some bar clamps. Now, they're not ideal, or I'm sorry, this is a pipe clamp. I prefer bar clamps. The pipe clamps are kind of big and unruly for me, but we'll make it work. So I'm going to clamp this roof into place. I'm going to actually kind of prop it up. I'll try to make it so y'all can see what I'm doing if you're wanting to see it. So kind of hold this over the edge a little bit. So I'm positioning it in between my marks that I made where I want to drill. Tighten it up a little bit. And I did like a little bit of an overhang on the back. Not completely flush. If you do it completely flush, that's fine too. I kind of like to have a little bit of an overhang to give my silicone a nice spot to sit and hopefully prevent as much water from seeping in as I possibly can. Grab my other pipe clamp. Should have grabbed that first. It's my other pipe clamp. See if I can balance these. All right, I'll put my other pipe clamp over here on this other side. And this is going to make it much easier for me to drill out being here by myself doing this. All right, so I feel good about where those are at. I am going to actually drill down with my drill bit here, and we're back to using the finishing screws now. I'm going to drill down. this. I feel like I look kind of awkward doing this by myself here. Move this up so you can see. So I'm going to drill down. It's balanced on the edge here. I'm just going to drill it down. I'm going to switch to my T10 bit, and I'm going to put in my last 3 screws. There's one. There's 3. Okay, now my house is done. Hey, nice. I love it. Great job, guys. So we have our houses. If you don't have bar clamps and you are hanging out by yourself building something right now, you know, it is still doable without the clamps. I kind of recommend like wedging the base of it up against something, a wall or something, so that you can drill into the top and have some support behind it to do your pre-drilling. And just like with the side stops and the bottom stops, I like to drill, you know, I would drill one side out first, add my screw, drill the other side out, add my screw, and then drill the middle out and do that, just to try to keep things in place and make it easier for you to hold. So that's the assembly. That's it. I don't know where all the rest of you are kind of at right now. I saw one finished house, so that's super exciting. The next step in this process is to add the silicone sealant. And so if you're going to do that right now, you can remove your hinge, and I'll show you. That's actually going to be really cool. It'll show you how you're going to remove your remove your latch, and show you how that plexiglass is going to slide out, and then you can add your silicone. So I'm gonna just do that really quick. I'm gonna show what that looks like. So again, using my T10 bit to kind of back this out and pull out my screw, or my screw and my little hook here, and then I'll pull out these 2 screws here. My left side stop will come right off, and then if I did everything correctly, my plexiglass should also just slide right out. So it's gonna just sit inside those notches from the right, bottom, and top stops. So that pulls out. This is the point if you want to take off the plexiglass covering, you can take that off. I'd recommend leaving the plexiglass out of it when you go to do your silicone. There are a couple little holes here, so there's a diagram. Move this back up. There's a diagram in your instructions that you may have seen already that just has some spots highlighted in yellow on it. And those are areas that I would recommend adding that sealant to. And on the edge, on the right side of your box, there are a couple little holes right here where your notches are exposed. That's a good spot. Again, one of the reasons you want to have your plexiglass out at this point is to make sure that when you're adding your silicone that you aren't accidentally gluing your plexiglass into place. So You can add a little bit of silicone in there. There are some rubber gloves in each of your kits to facilitate that a little bit easier. You can use the tip of your glove and your finger to smooth the silicone into place once you put it on there. Another alternative is you could actually finish your house first before you add the sealant on there. That's kind of up to you. Wherever you add your sealant, that's going to be sealed pretty well, and then you can always put your finish over top of that and around it too. But yeah, that's pretty much it.